In retrospect, do you think that the Mueller investigation succeeded in its mission?
I think there are ways that it did succeed. It accomplished an enormous amount, and I tried to recount the various successes and how we got there, trying to walk a reader through how the investigation pieced together so much information, from Paul Manafort giving internal campaign polling data to a Russian operative, to how Russia attacked our election. At the same time, I didn't want to write an easy book, which was just how we overcame the interference of the White House. Take a hard look at things that we did well, but also things that we could have done better. And in that score, I offered my own assessment as to things that I thought we should have done differently.
Yes, Andrew. This is Greg Farrell, and I spent a couple of years covering the Mueller investigation, or at least trying to, because unfortunately for me, there were no leaks from it. So I've found all the detail in the book to be fascinating. And I do want to go back to what you were talking about. Much has been made of some of the failures of the special counsel's work in terms of the big picture, which we'll get to. But in terms of success, yes, the indictments against the Internet Research Agency and the GRU members, that, now that we're 5 weeks away from the next election, it seems like a message that's gotten shouted out in the din of everything that's going on is this was an active effort 4 years ago, and as far as we know, it's probably happening again.
Absolutely. So one of the things that's really a shame that I write about is there's clear evidence that Russia interfered in our election. And analogizing this to Pearl Harbor, after Pearl Harbor, the country banded together, understood it was under attack, and it wasn't politicized. Everyone knew who had attacked us and that something had to be done. Here, what has gotten muddied is the people who try to politicize that issue with whether somebody on the Trump campaign, quote, colluded, which, as you know, is not a legal term, with Russia. But leave that aside. Let's assume there's no evidence of that. It still doesn't mean you ignore what it is that Russia did. And that's where I really think that the country has a long way to go in defending itself and hardening the target so that we are not subject to interference from foreign countries.
So, as you say in the introduction to the book, one of the reasons you wrote this is because, like Watergate beforehand, it helps to have a first-person account of what actually happened. Looking back in history and comparing that to what happened with the special counsel's office, it's clear that the special counsel's structure and the constant drumbeat threat of Mueller being fired had an effect on the steps that you guys took. Would that be a fair judgment?
I do think that's fair, and a really good point, Greg, that one of the things that I think is really useful is, and the reason I wrote the book, is so that people can see what we did, what we didn't do, and some of the ways in which the current special counsel rules inhibited our ability to speak publicly and to what I call the educational function of the special counsel's office. I analogize to Archibald Cox in the Watergate era, and I'm old enough to actually remember this, where he spoke out about why he was seeking the Nixon tapes and explained that to the public. And I think the current special counsel rules, where we are just a part of the Department of Justice and don't have the ability to speak unilaterally about what happened, does a disservice to educating the American public about what we did, why we did it, and also what we didn't do. And I think the rules do need to change, because God forbid we're in this situation with respect to another president. You want to make sure that the rules are conducive to making sure that the public understands what it is that a special counsel is doing.
So, Andrew, I think we have about 1 minute left, and we come right up against this, the special counsel, the constrictions, restrictions about it, and who the person is. And in Robert Mueller, whom you know very well, and I've followed his career for decades, just an admirable public servant, and clearly the type of guy who does not want to play in the press, clearly the type of guy who doesn't want to put himself front and center. That turned out to be a real inhibition towards the efforts of the office, was it not?
Well, Bob Mueller is a national treasure, and his sense of the press, as I recount, is you live by the press, you die by the press. So that's just not him as a person. But I do think that it would be useful to have rules where we could go public to say, look, here's why we did not subpoena the president, something I think we should have done. And I write about how I think it sets a bad precedent. But it would have been useful to have a discussion about that. It would have been useful to have discussion about why we didn't look at the finances of the president.